Good day and well met. I thought I would take this beautiful day as a chance to step outside, get some fresh air, and tell you all about how I made my 17th century stays. So the pattern that I used for these stays is actually an out-of-print simplicity pattern, and it was pretty hard to find. In fact, I could only find it in the larger sizes. If you're not familiar, patterns come in two different types of sizes when you buy the prepackaged ones like at Hobby Lobby or wherever. They come in the smaller sizes and then they come in the larger sizes. And I was placed on the smaller sizes, but I had to use one of the larger size patterns. So it was a little bit trickier to try to get the sizing right, especially because this was the first time I had made anything like this. Aside from a very simple costume vest that I had made for my brother, I'd never really made any bodices of any type, at least that had any sort of fit to them. And obviously stays are, like a corset, a fitted garment. So it was definitely an interesting endeavor, and I hope you enjoy sharing this journey with me. So the stays that I'm making are from the 17th century, or at least that's kind of the approximate era that I was going for. The story that I'm making the stays to be from is taking place in the 1600s, and it was actually pretty hard to find information on the 1600s as far as fashion. For some reason people prefer the 1700s or even the 1500s in the Tudor era when it comes to like creating historical garments. So it was pretty tricky to find any sort of pattern or information. I ended up doing a lot of research on the garments of the pilgrims because they were kind of the middle class like equivalent of the 1600s fashion from the approximate decades that I was looking for. It was pretty tricky, but in the end, I think I got what I was going for. It's more of a Tudor silhouette than a early 1600s silhouette, but that's okay. It works, and I'm pleased with the results and with the shape that I ended up achieving. It also works great because I have since made some other Tudor garments, so having that underlayer is great. Now, originally in the Tudor era, if we are considering these Tudor stays, they did not have a separate garment called stays. It would have been just part of the kirtle, which was a dress that you wore, and then if you were one of the rich people, you would wear a gown over it. But since I was making these not just for the Tudor period, but I wanted to be able to use them for kind of some different time periods kind of after that as well, it actually was better to not make it all in one piece because that would have been a problem and would have gotten in the way of trying to cosplay the character that I was cosplaying. A little bit more information on the fashion of the eras that I'm going for here. Now, the 1600s, we've already established that's what I was going for, but again, these are more like a Tudor garment. So the fashion of the Tudor era was to have a very cylindrical, slightly tapered torso, and to have a lifted chest area, and to have the appearance of a small waist also through having big flaring out skirts. Now, you won't see that here obviously because I'm not wearing skirts in any of these pictures where I'm trying it on, but that's something to keep in mind as you're watching me figure out if these fit right or not, that's kind of what we're going for. Now, if I was going for true 1620s-ish fashion, by then it was more fashionable to have the torso tapering to more of a fine point, a little bit more cinched in and less cylindrical than the Tudor era. And then later, whenever you get to the 1700s, you will see that classic cylindrical shape again with the rise of the different garments such as the robe à l'anglaise and the robe à la française. I hope I'm saying that correctly. But yeah, there's just a little tidbit about the history of this era of fashion that I'm trying to replicate in these stays. Having watched enough sewing YouTube videos to know this was a smart thing to do, I decided to start by making a mock-up with some black and gray fabric that I had lying around. The mock-up turned out pretty well. I decided not to do any of the finishing touches like sewing the seam across the top above the boning or things like that, just because why should I just have to rip all that out to get the boning out, and it's only a mock-up. In fact, I think at this point I've actually thrown it away because I made these stays over a year ago. So I made the mock-up. It fit pretty good, although I did have to take it in a couple places because it just wasn't fitting right. And also bear in mind that I have never worn prior to this any sort of stays or corset or anything like that. So I don't know how it's supposed to sit on my body. I don't know how my body is supposed to sit inside the stays. So I'm doing all of these try-ons with just a bra, a normal bra, until I get the boning in place. And even then, since it's only a mock-up and it's not as sturdy because there aren't as many fabric layers, it was really hard to tell if it was fitting like it was supposed to. But nonetheless, I kept moving forward, partly because I had a deadline. I had a little film thing that I was making that I needed these stays for, and yeah, I needed to get that done. So I marched steadily onward towards my finished product. The fabric that I chose for this project was just some basic cotton fabric that I found at Joann's, including some remnants, because who doesn't love remnants? They're cheaper, they come in small quantities. If you need a small quantity, it was great. I chose a yellow fabric for the outside, for the fashion fabric, as it might be called on your pattern if you're familiar with patterns, because that's the color of the stays that the character in the book that I was making a book trailer for was wearing. In case you're curious, yes, it was my book. It was the first book that I'd ever published. So I made the stays in that color because of that. According to my research, yellow was a color that they could produce at the time. Now, to be fair, mine were a pretty bright yellow, but I don't look good in really dusty yellows, and most of the time these stays would be worn underneath some other type of garment anyway, so today it doesn't really matter because I always wear them with a dress or something over them. So I made them in this yellow fabric. I actually made it 2 layers thick so that you wouldn't see the lining, which was a beige color. Hello. What you guys doing?
What are you doing here?
I'm just getting some fresh air. Thought I might take pictures with the nice greenery in the background.
Yeah, bye.
Bye! Have fun with your practice! There's a soccer practice, I think, going on over there. There's a school over there. There's normally nobody out here when I come to this little area, but apparently there's kids there. And they're like, what are you doing? But anyway, so 2 layers of cotton fabric that was yellow, and then a beige kind of khaki color for the lining, and then I used a lighter beige, like almost a sand color, for the binding. So I cut out the pattern pieces based on the adjustments that I had made to the original pattern pieces from the mock-up. So I actually traced the mock-up onto wrapping paper, which was going to serve as my pattern paper, and then I cut that out and then used that as the pattern for my final version of the stays.
Boots or something. Well, I guess
I
not.
have boots that are your size.
You what?
I don't have any boots.
What about those lace-up
For you.
ones?
What? Those are ladies' boots.
They wouldn't look. I guess they would look kind of ladylike, which is not very becoming of a strong knight. This is gonna look horrible though.
Why would it look horrible?
Because I mean, unless you can see my face, everything looks completely unproportionate because these are so wide.
It's fine. That's how it is.
Oh no, I need my. Oh, I'm starting to feel very knightly, very chivalrous and hero-like.
That's not how you wear this.
What? Oh,
don't have
no, it came undone when I was doing.
You need to wear your belt much tighter.
Okay, well, it came undone when I was doing my clothing. Yeah, I was like, what in the world is
Scotch
going
belly.
No, thank you.
They actually literally would like take stuffing and put it in there to make it poof more.
Ew.
It was
man,
right.
this is, I don't think
tucking
like
your
the hood.
pants into your socks was a thing
I don't
yet.
like the hood as much because you can't see my nice hat.
So I feel like I should note here that I actually never used the original pattern for this design. I did cut out the pieces, but I traced them all onto wrapping paper because I didn't want to damage any of the original pattern pieces, because this pattern can be pretty expensive because it's out of print. We got it for a pretty good price, but I didn't want to damage the original pattern in any way in case I ever needed it again. So I used this wrapping paper to then trace and cut out all of my different fabric pieces, and the pattern said to cut out the fashion fabric and the lining all separately, but I just did it all at once because why not? And then of course all I had to do was sew it together and sew the boning channels and put the boning in and do the binding, which Actually, the binding ended up being the most time-consuming and frustrating part of this whole process, because at this point, I was down to the wire. I really had to get this done. I was actually finishing the binding on the day I needed to film this book trailer, and so that was kind of stressful. And I actually didn't get it all the way done. I actually had a few pins holding the last of the binding in place, but I had the eyelets sewn in, I hand sewed all the eyelets, and most of the binding done, and I filmed my book trailer. Now, that's not where the story ends though, because I have gone back and made a few changes. One, I have taken in the fabric on the sides in a couple places because I discovered that they still just weren't really tight enough. In fact, I've discovered that they just don't quite fit right in general, and I think that the large reason for that is because the torso length of the stays is just too long. It's just made for somebody obviously who was bigger than I am, since I had to size down the pattern and I'm a short person. So I didn't think about how whenever you size something down, if you're also shorter than the person this was originally intended for, you have to make it shorter. So the stays kind of don't hit at my natural waist. They kind of go a little too far down, which is kind of hard when you're trying to lace them up and make them be tight enough and supportive enough. But taking them in did help with that. As far as how supportive they are, they're really great. I actually wore them to a Renaissance fair recently, which I plan on sharing that vlog soon as well. And I felt very comfortable in them. I had a friend help me lace them up simply so that I could do it faster because we were trying to get on the road because the fair was a couple hours. I think it was about an hour away. But nevertheless, they fit great. The shoulder straps are also a little bit too long. Again, I am a small person. I have small shoulders. I'm just small. So if I ever were to make something similar in the future, I would make the shoulder straps either not where they tie on, where they just are in place so that I know that they fit right and, you know, can adjust that to my measurements, or to where they are shorter so there's more room for me to tighten the lacings that attach them. But overall, I was very pleased. I left out the busk in the middle just because at this point in history, they weren't really using busks to my knowledge. Perhaps they were and I just wasn't aware of it, but I wish that I had put boning in the middle. In fact, I actually went back in and put boning in the middle, but it definitely needed that extra support. Another thing is that I made the boning just a little bit too long. I did not know that in Tudor supportive garments, which is kind of the period this is supposed to be, they left the top couple inches unboned, and I didn't know that. So that makes it a lot harder to make the top flush with myself whenever I lace into them, which creates this weird little gap, which also makes it harder to get the support and the lift that you're supposed to get with these on. But it's okay. I intentionally don't lace my stays or my corsets or whatever you want to call them to be as supportive, if for lack of a better word, to lift as much, simply because I'm not comfortable with that. I prefer to keep things a little bit more modest and a little bit less showy. Not that I couldn't wear a partlet or something like that to help, you know, cover that up, but still, I don't tend to, you know, do that as much in my garments anyway, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, they're very comfortable. They turned out great. If you can find this pattern, I would definitely recommend this pattern. And simplicity, if you're thinking about bringing patterns like this back and you want somebody to test them out, I'd love to do that for you. Thanks for watching this video. If you're interested in watching the 2 original videos that I did that are much longer and go into much more detail on my process, I will link them down below. They were originally posted on my other channel, including the finished book trailer that I created. I will link that as well. That's also on my other channel. So thank you for watching. I hope that you enjoyed seeing my journey of creating my first pair of stays. And if you're interested in seeing more videos like this, let me know down below. I have since made a Tudor dress, and I've also made a couple of different shifts and stuff like that. And I'm currently working on hand sewing a linen pirate shirt. Not this one, but it's similar. So I didn't make this one. I actually bought this one on ThreadUp. I'm not sponsored by ThreadUp, but maybe someday they'll sponsor me too. I do hope that you will enjoy your sewing journeys or whatever other adventures you may be embarking on today, and never forget that time travel is real. Bye.
Oh, I do not know why this is in my fabric stash. When I was organizing my fabric, I saw this folded up and I thought it was fabric. Oh, this goes in my costumes. That is too funny. This is the first version of a cotton shift that I made that I did not do some things right when I was drafting the pattern for myself, and it doesn't fit correctly. So I need to put this with my kind of costume slash historical outfit stuff, even though I can't wear it. If I'm ever going to do custom work with somebody else, or let's say I'm ever putting on a play or a short film like I do dream of doing someday, and I need a slightly smaller shift, that'll work. So that goes put away somewhere.
Shall I play epic acoustic music for background music?
Sure, if you want to.
Hey, it's gonna take me a while to set up. Just so you know.